Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags Metal Reviews, and today we're giving you guys our final review of Death Atlas by Cradle Decapitation. So after listening to this album for an entire week, I'll take the floor and say that this album is a masterpiece. From front to end, this album was phenomenal. And in regards to getting into details, I'm gonna say that this is one of the albums where throughout the week, different songs would start to stand out to me. You know, on Monday, it was this song, it was one song that was like really speaking to me. And then on Tuesday, there was another one that started doing that. And it's like popcorn just popping up in my mind. By the end of the song, I have a full bag of popcorn and it's called Death Atlas. And it's delicious. And yeah, now, last week I talked about Time's Cruel Curtain and how much I like that song.
Yeah.
That song, it turns out, after listening to it for a week, is just one of the best songs I've ever heard in my life. This song has so much emotion in it. This song is still heavy as fuck, though, like the rest of the album. But with how conclusive of a song it feels, it got so much more weight to it than everything that happened before it. And I remember on Saturday, I put the album on from front to end, and when it got to this song, I wasn't super duper familiar with all the tracks yet because it had only been a little bit, like that was the next day. And I thought, yeah, I think that was Death Atlas, that was the end of the album, and it starts fading out, I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. And then the Unerasable Past comes on, I'm like, what? It's not over? There's still more. Yeah. And not only is there more, there's a 9-minute song waiting for me. And Death Atlas, the title track, well, I think we did criticize it a little bit in our first impressions. I think that track is ridiculously good. And I love how the Unerasable Past has the melody of Death Atlas, in it. It paraphrases the melody that happens near the end of the track, and it's just awesome how those two go hand in hand, and it's sick. And just Death Atlas, the way that song fades, even though I said, oh, 3-minute fade out, you said it's fitting, I understand now. It is truly fitting to have such a big fade out. This album, you know, I find this band, like the first half of their stuff was just like, oh, you know, brutal, gross imagery or whatever, and then they kind of shifted their focus onto like an environmental message. And this album is kind of like the conclusion to that, how like Earth is totally done, you know, from so much that humanity's done to it, and it's like, what are we in the eyes of the universe? You know, we're nothing.
Yeah, well, this feels like it was a sequel to the Anthropocene extinction, because it's basically an extension of the same content.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the interludes? You know, The Great Dying Part 1, Great Dying Part 2, Unerasable Past, and the first track.
You know what? They were all really good, and I felt like the biggest thing that made these tracks really good interludes and a good intro is that they carried the mood of the album. It didn't feel like anything was totally disjunct. It felt like they could have come on at whatever point in the album and it wouldn't matter, because the mood is still there. The dark, grim, this is the end of the world kind of mood.
Yeah.
Like there's just something hanging over you, perhaps a scorched earth upon your shoulders. But yeah, like I felt like it fit really well. So I didn't really mind whenever they came on if I was shuffling the album or just going from front to back. Like it still felt fine to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. You make a good point when you say that they maintain the mood, because they do. But for me, it was like listening to the whole album for the first time, those interludes fit in very well, and they kind of told a story and bridged arcs and things like that. But the more I listened to it throughout the week, I was definitely skipping these because I just found them kind of boring and not really eventful in terms of music. You know, it was just they're kind of relaying a message. And if you get the message once or twice, you're kind of like, okay, got it, don't need to hear it again. So I was skipping them a lot, which is a little sad. 4 tracks, you know, out of, 14 tracks that I'm skipping, which still leaves 10 songs, which isn't bad by any means. I really like this album too, but I didn't quite have the intense reaction that you had, because things weren't popping out at me all week long. I was tending to find a lot of the songs were, not that they sounded the same, but they're all of the same similar caliber. And it's not a bad caliber, they're all pretty good, with a couple exceptions that stood out. Bring Back the Plague stood out to me a lot. A lot of these songs have really good vocal variation. This one specifically I felt like was a little notch above the rest. I noticed low growls, medium growls, high harsh screams, and then the whatever his clean vocals called. I've heard it referenced as a goblin voice before, and I kind of like that, so I'm going to call it the goblin voice. The chorus has a really nice melody in it. There's just a lot going. It feels like a single, and I can tell why it was a single, like why they released that as a single. I don't really care too much for the riff on this song. It's not bad, but it's not great. It sounds like a bit like tremolo picking, whatever. The breakdown at the end of the song is my favorite part of the whole song. You've got these like long sustained, really low growls that go on with during the breakdown, and I really love that. But speaking of guitar riffs, which I mentioned a second ago, the best riff on the album is probably one of the simplest riffs on the album. That is Time's Cruel Curtain. That song is probably my favorite song on the album, like you mentioned is yours. It's got this 5-note riff, okay? That's it. Sounds so simple, but it evokes this sense of danger, like this sense of urgency, like it has this alarming vibe to it. And I just love that. And then the chorus comes on, and the chorus is all somber, and it has this dark and dreadful kind of feeling. And then it goes back to this blast beat shit, and then it quickly it plays this part. Oh yeah, that's the part with the little bass line in it.
Oh,
right?
That's so
plays a little
good.
bass line, and then it goes into some blast beats, and then it does a few different things, but then it goes right back into that somber chorus part again. And then after that, the verse that comes after that is an extension of that somber chorus. It doesn't really go back heavy again, and it stays like that, and it kind of fades out at the end.
Yeah, that's how it ends.
So the way that song is just structured is very unique to me, and it gels very well with my ears. Like, it just like the flow of it, because it sounds very contemporary. Like, it doesn't sound traditional in its structure at all. But when you just hear it and you're not thinking about it, it just sounds like a regular song. But when you start analyzing it, I'm like, wow, that's kind of unique how they kind of just...
They really vamp the chorus out, which just sounds amazing. What he does with his voice on it as well, it's just perfection.
And after that little bass line that he does, it's like a mini bass solo, that 5-note riff comes back in again. And I'm like, whoa, here they are. They're wrapping this up like a nice little package. And then it goes into their part and then fades out. And this is another song that has one of those like very low, deep, sustained growls just kind of happening while the music's like slamming around it. Like, I don't know, man. That song really stood out to me amongst everything else, and I wish that the rest of the tracks had elements in them that gravitated me towards them like that one did.
Yeah, you know, one of the biggest things about this album for me is that every song has something, and there's so much detail in it as well, and it's really hard to really pick out like everything. Like, Vulturous has some nasty riffs.
Yeah.
One Day Closer to the End of the World has nasty stuff. Like, every song has something about it that stands out, but because there's so much, it's really hard to pick it all out just by name and just by describing it. Like, there's just so much to this album.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, with that being said, let's get to ratings. So, Vile, what do you rate this album?
I think it's a strong album. I mean, I don't want to just keep repeating what I said, but again, I'll just reiterate. The interlude tracks were a bit of a downer for me, and there wasn't a lot that really screamed out at me, but this album was still very, very enjoyable from beginning to end. I don't think it's worth a toe tag for me personally, but it's gonna get a 7.
All right, a 7. I think it might be a little obvious from how I've spoken up about this album that it gets my toe tag. It was unfortunate to see that it does not go on our 2 toe tags list, but I still think this album is definitely an incredible album, and it just makes deciding the best albums of the year even harder, because this year has been ridiculous. Anyway, guys, that's all we got from you today. A 7 from Vile, a toe tag from me, and that's all we got. So remember to like the video if you like it, comment, tell us in the comments below if you love it as much as I did, or if you generally enjoyed it as much as Vile did. Anyway, subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm TV Fish.
And I'm Vile Self.
And we'll see you guys later.